It was one of those cold, bitter nights where the wind cut through the streets like a knife, the kind of night that makes people hurry inside and lock their doors. In a small neighborhood not far from the busy city, a woman lived quietly in her home. She wasn't rich or famous, just an ordinary person trying to live her life with kindness and a strong heart. That night she didn't expect anything out of the usual. But life had something different in store for her. She was sitting near her window, sipping on some hot tea to fight off the chill, when she noticed something unusual across the street. There by the corner of the alley stood a small group of people. At first she thought they were just some kids trying to get shelter from the cold. But as she looked closer, she realized it wasn't just a group of friends hanging out. It was a family, a man, a woman, and 2 children. They looked tired and frozen, shivering under thin clothes that were not nearly enough for the winter night. Their breath came out in white clouds, and their faces showed how cold they really were. Her heart went out to them. No one should have to stand outside like that in such freezing weather. But there was something else. The man had tattoos and wore a leather jacket with a strange symbol she had seen before. She had heard stories about people like him, members of a group called the Hells Angels. Everyone in the neighborhood seemed to be scared of them. They were known for living rough and sometimes getting into trouble. People whispered warnings when they saw them around. She knew the stories, the rumors, and the fears. But as she looked at the family now, those stories didn't seem to matter. They were just human beings, cold and needing help. She thought about the children first, how unfair it was for them to be out in the cold so vulnerable. She felt a deep pull inside her to do something. Maybe it was because she had faced hard times herself and knew what it meant to need a helping hand. For a moment she hesitated. What if it was dangerous? What if the man was angry or didn't want her help? What if the neighbors found out and judged her for it? But none of those worries lasted long. She wrapped herself in her warmest coat and stepped outside. The street was almost empty, and the cold bit through her boots as she walked towards the family. The man noticed her first, his eyes narrowing as he tried to figure out who she was and what she wanted. The woman held the 2 children close, their little bodies shaking with cold. The woman's eyes were filled with a mix of fear and hope. "Are you okay?" the woman asked softly, her voice trembling from the cold. "No," the black woman answered simply. "Come inside. You can warm up." The family looked surprised, but the man nodded slowly, sensing her genuine kindness. They followed her back to her home. As they entered, warmth wrapped around them like a soft blanket. The children's faces began to change as they felt the heat, and the woman quickly got some blankets to wrap around them. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't want to scare them or make them uncomfortable. Instead, she made hot drinks and simple food. The children's eyes brightened as they ate, and the man sat quietly watching everything with a calm, protective air. The room was small but cozy. The walls had pictures of the woman's family and friends, and a small fire crackled softly in the fireplace. The woman sat down near the family and started talking gently, telling stories about the neighborhood, about the stars outside, about the changing seasons. The children listened with wide eyes, feeling safe for the first time in days. As the night wore on, the woman noticed how much the man softened. His tough appearance stayed, but his eyes revealed something more. A tiredness, yes, but also a deep gratitude. They didn't speak much about who they were or why they were outside. There was no need for that now. Tonight was about shelter and kindness, nothing more. The woman thought about how easy it would have been to walk away, to lock her door and pretend she didn't see them. But something inside her wouldn't let that happen. She believed in treating others like human beings, no matter who they were or where they came from. Outside, the wind howled and snow began to fall gently, covering the streets in a soft white blanket. Inside, the little house was warm and filled with quiet hope. Before the family left early the next morning, the man spoke quietly. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice rough but sincere. The woman nodded, feeling a strange connection between them that words could not explain. When they stepped back into the cold, she watched as they disappeared down the street, wrapped in her blankets and her care. She knew this night would stay with her forever. It was a reminder that sometimes kindness is the bravest thing a person can do, even when the world tells you to be afraid. As she closed her door and looked out one last time, she didn't think about the rumors or the danger. She only thought about the warmth she had shared and how one small act could change everything. That night was the beginning of something unexpected. It was the start of a story that would bring people together in ways no one could have imagined. The woman's home was small but warm, with soft light glowing from the kitchen and a faint smell of something cooking. When she opened the door to the freezing family, the cold wind rushed in behind them, bringing with it the sharp bite of the winter night. The man, his wife, and their young child looked tired and worn out from traveling through the cold. Their clothes were thin and their faces were pale from the chill. For a moment, the woman hesitated. She had heard stories about people like them, members of a notorious biker group called the Hells Angels. Many folks in the neighborhood kept their distance, but something about the child clutching their mother's hand and shivering stopped her from shutting the door. Without a word, she stepped aside and invited them in. "Come on in," she said softly. "You don't have to be out there in the cold." They exchanged looks, surprised by her kindness, but grateful nonetheless. They stepped inside, their boots scraping on the old wooden floor as they settled in. The warmth of the room wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. The woman moved quickly to the kitchen. "Let me get you some warm clothes and something to eat," she said, her voice steady and calm. The child's eyes widened at the sight of the cozy room, the soft blankets folded neatly on the couch, and the smell of stew simmering on the stove. The woman found an old sweater and a pair of socks for the little one, helping her change out of the wet, cold clothes. The child's face relaxed for the first time in hours. Meanwhile, the man and woman, members of the biker family, sat quietly at the small kitchen table. They watched the woman move with care and purpose. She didn't ask any questions, didn't seem afraid or judgmental. She just helped. The man cleared his throat and finally spoke. "We didn't mean to bother you," he said. "We just got stuck out there tonight. Roads are bad. We didn't know where else to go." The woman nodded, understanding. "I'm glad you came here. It's too cold to be outside." The wife smiled weakly, looking tired but relieved. "Thank you. It means a lot." The woman poured them each a hot cup of tea, the steam rising like little clouds in the chilly kitchen. The child, now wrapped in a soft blanket, sat close by, sipping warm milk. As the night settled, the conversation started slowly. The woman didn't push them but listened when they chose to speak. They talked about family, about how hard life had been lately. The man shared stories about being on the road a lot, trying to provide for his family but always feeling like there was never enough time or money. The woman nodded, feeling the weight of their struggles. Life had not been easy for her either. She worked long hours as a cleaner in nearby homes, barely making enough to pay rent and bills, yet here she was opening her door to strangers in need. The child, now more relaxed, started to talk softly about school and favorite games. The woman smiled and joined in, telling stories about her own childhood, about simple joys like playing outside in the summer sun or reading books by the fire. Slowly, the walls between them began to break down. The family started to feel less like strangers and more like guests, maybe even friends. At one point, the man looked around the modest home and said, "You have a good heart. Letting us in like this." The woman shrugged modestly. "I know what it's like to need help. Sometimes all you need is a little kindness." The wife reached out and took the woman's hand. "You don't know how much this means to us. It's hard to find kindness sometimes, especially when people see us and just judge." The woman squeezed her hand gently. "I don't judge. Everyone has a story. We're all just trying to get by." Outside the wind howled, but inside the warmth grew. The child drifted off to sleep on the couch, her small hand still wrapped in the blanket. The family stayed for a few hours, eating the warm food the woman had prepared and resting their tired bodies. The night passed quietly, filled with an unspoken bond that needed no words. Before leaving, the man looked at the woman with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you for everything," he said. "You don't know how much you've helped us." The woman smiled warmly. "Take care of each other. You're always welcome here if you need." They left quietly into the early morning light, the cold still biting. But now they had something stronger than the chill, a memory of kindness and warmth. That night, the woman sat alone in her small living room, feeling a strange mixture of peace and hope. She never expected a knock on the door to bring such a connection. Sometimes, she thought, life surprises you when you open your heart without hesitation. Little did she know, her simple act of kindness would soon bring an unexpected visit, one that would change her life and the whole neighborhood in ways she could never imagine. The night was cold, colder than anyone expected. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and making the small house feel even cozier. Inside, the woman moved quietly, doing her best to make the family she had taken in feel safe and warm. She hadn't known much about the man or his family at first. All she saw were tired faces, clothes soaked from the cold, and a desperate need for shelter. That was enough for her. The father, a tough-looking man with a weathered face, didn't say much. He was quiet but grateful, watching how this stranger, this woman, opened her home without hesitation. His children, small and shivering, clung to her warmth and kindness. The woman wrapped blankets around them one by one, making sure the youngest was tucked in close. She prepared some hot food, simple but comforting, and set it down on the table. The family ate slowly, each bite a little comfort in the harsh night. At first, there was silence between them, just the sounds of the wind outside and soft breathing inside. But as the minutes passed, the children began to relax. The smallest one smiled shyly, and soon the older children were asking questions, curious about this kind woman who had given them hope. The father finally spoke, his voice rough but sincere. "Thank you for this. We didn't know where to go." The woman smiled gently. "No one should be out in this cold alone. Everyone deserves a safe place." She didn't ask about the man's past or the group he belonged to. What mattered was that he was human, like everyone else, needing kindness and shelter when the world was harsh. Outside, the night stretched on, but inside the small house, a different kind of warmth grew, one built on trust, gratitude, and quiet understanding. The woman stayed up late, sitting by the window, thinking about how small acts of kindness could make such a big difference. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now she had given a family hope. What happened next surprised her. Days later, her quiet neighborhood was filled with the sound of engines roaring and heavy boots pounding on the pavement. Dozens of bikers had come not to cause trouble, but to thank the woman who had helped one of their own. She watched from her porch, amazed and a little nervous. These were men and women known for their tough appearances, but today they were something else, grateful and respectful. They didn't just come for the man she had sheltered. They came to show that kindness was never forgotten. No matter who you were or where you came from, the woman smiled, realizing that her simple act had created a chain of goodwill that reached far beyond her little home. In that moment, she understood that sometimes, helping one person could bring an entire community together and change lives in ways no one expected. The days after the night she sheltered the small biker family passed quietly. The woman thought about that evening often. She remembered the cold faces, the tired eyes, and the genuine gratitude in their voices. She didn't expect anything else to happen. After all, she had simply done what felt right, offering help to people in need, regardless of who they were. But then one afternoon, the peaceful calm of her neighborhood was broken by a sound unlike any she had heard before. It started softly at first, a low rumble like thunder rolling in the distance. Then it grew louder and louder until it became clear what was happening. A long line of motorcycles was approaching, filling the street with roaring engines and the unmistakable rumble of powerful machines. Neighbors stepped outside, eyes wide with surprise and curiosity. Some whispered nervously, others just watched in silence. The woman stood by her front door, heart pounding but calm. The motorcycles stopped right in front of her house. One by one, dozens of bikers climbed down from their bikes. They were a tough-looking group, dressed in leather jackets, boots, and patches that told stories she could only guess at. Despite their rough appearance, there was no threat in their eyes, only respect. One of the bikers, a man with silver streaks in his beard and a steady calm in his gaze, stepped forward. "We wanted to come back," he said, his voice steady but kind, "to thank you for what you did for our family." The woman felt a rush of warmth spread through her chest. She hadn't expected this at all. The kindness she had shown to a stranger's family had touched an entire group, and now they were here to return that kindness. They didn't bring gifts or flashy presents. Instead, they brought their presence, quiet, strong, and steady. They shared stories about the family she helped, explaining how important it was to them that she opened her home without judgment. It wasn't just about shelter from the cold. It was about seeing someone as a person, beyond all the labels and fears. The neighbors started to come closer, drawn in by the unexpected scene. They saw these bikers differently now. not as the frightening outsiders they had heard about on the news, but as a group of people capable of gratitude, loyalty, and respect. The woman spoke softly to the crowd. "I didn't do anything special. I just did what anyone would do when they see someone in need. We all need kindness." The leader nodded. "You reminded us of something important, that no matter who we are, kindness matters most." For the rest of the afternoon, the bikers stayed in the neighborhood, chatting with residents, sharing laughter, and even helping with small tasks. They fixed a broken fence, helped carry groceries, and even played with the children in the street. It was a side of them no one expected, and it changed how many people felt about the group forever. When the sun began to set, the bikers gathered once more around the woman's porch. "You gave us shelter when we had nowhere else to go," the leader said. "Now we want to be here for you whenever you need us." The woman smiled, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. You've already given me so much." As the motorcycles roared back to life and the group rode away into the evening, the woman stood on her porch, feeling a deep sense of connection. She realized that sometimes the most unlikely people could become the strongest friends. Her simple act of kindness had opened a door, not just for the bikers she helped that night, but for an entire community. From that day forward, the neighborhood was different. The bikers became a part of the community, showing up at local events, helping with charity, and standing up for their neighbors. And the woman who had taken a chance on kindness became a symbol of hope, proof that compassion could break down even the toughest walls. In the end, it wasn't about leather jackets or motorcycles. It was about people who needed help and people willing to give it, and that made all the difference. The days after the big arrival of the bikers were unlike anything the woman had ever imagined. Her quiet life, once filled mostly with work and simple routines, had changed forever. It wasn't just because dozens of Hell's Angels had shown up at her doorstep with gifts and thanks. It was because she had found a new kind of family and community. At first, she was surprised. The bikers, with their tattoos, leather jackets, and tough appearances, didn't seem like the kind of people who would be friends with someone like her. But soon she realized there was so much more beneath the surface. These were people with strong loyalty, deep respect, and big hearts hidden under their rough exteriors. They didn't just come to say thank you and leave. They stayed in the neighborhood, checking in on her often. Some helped with small repairs around her home. Others brought over food or simply spent time talking with her, sharing stories from their lives. The woman, in turn, welcomed them with kindness and openness. She cooked meals for them on occasion and listened carefully whenever they spoke about their struggles and dreams. One evening, as she sat with a few of the bikers around a small fire pit in her backyard, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. These people accepted her without judgment. She realized that kindness had built a bridge between their very different worlds. She began to see the impact of her small act of generosity in a much larger way. The community started to notice too. People who once looked at the bikers with fear or suspicion began to change their minds. They saw how the woman's kindness had softened the edges and brought out the good in people who many had written off. The bikers became protectors of the neighborhood in their own way. They didn't just watch over her, they helped keep the streets safer for everyone. They joined community cleanups, supported local businesses, and became friendly faces that people could rely on. Slowly, a sense of unity grew where there had been distance before. The woman's story became a symbol of hope. It reminded everyone that kindness doesn't need to be complicated. It can be as simple as opening your door to someone in need, even if they seem different or scary at first. It taught people that every person has a story and deserves compassion. One day, the woman was invited to speak at a local community event. She was nervous but grateful for the chance to share her experience. She spoke about how a freezing night, a warm home, and a little trust could change lives. She encouraged others to look beyond appearances and to find the humanity in everyone. The audience listened quietly, many moved by her words. Some bikers were there too, standing proudly beside her. The room felt full of hope and connection. Looking back, the woman understood that helping the Hells Angels family was never just about that one night. It was about building lasting relationships, breaking down walls, and proving that kindness is powerful enough to change even the hardest hearts. She learned that family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who stand by you when it matters most. And sometimes, family comes in the most unexpected forms. From that moment on, the woman continued to live her life with the same open heart and courage. The bikers remained part of her world, a reminder that true friendship and respect can come from the most surprising places. Her life was no longer just about survival. It was about connection, love, and the strength found in being kind to others. And that made all the difference. Brighter.